Jay, welcome to Locked In, man.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming all the way from Baltimore today. And thank you for the merch. We got to tell the listeners, you just rolled out your very own merch line.
Yep.
If you want to tell people kind of like the inspiration behind it and what I'm wearing right now.
So what he's wearing right now is my clothing brand is cleanclothing.store. Basically, it's meant to be more of like the streetwear type of designs is what I'm going for. Everything's trying to have a positive message behind it. Like the one he's got on right now is life is beautiful. Mine says the beauty in the struggle. But also it's just designs that I like, that I think are cool. Really just trying to get back to like the community back when streetwear was very small and you didn't have everybody across the world wearing every brand possible. So that's kind of what I'm trying to get back to, is making like a smaller community of like littler streetwear brands that people like and they feel like they connect with.
Yeah, and very comfortable. I was just telling you, you know, you never know what to expect coming into someone's like own made shirt.
Yeah.
But these are not too tight. I'm wearing a large and very comfortable.
Awesome.
And I love that all these individuals can come on the show, and everyone has like something that they're doing, like the entrepreneurial spirit. It's really cool to see.
Yeah.
And we'll have the bio. I mean, the link, you could send it to me and I'll put it in the description for people.
That'd be great, dude. Thank you. I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming. Did you grow up in Baltimore?
Yeah. Right outside of Baltimore, actually. So, like, the way Baltimore is a little bit different. Like, we have the county and the city. So, I'm a county kid. And then you have the city, which is, like, you know, the inner city, the hardcore part of it. But, yeah, I grew up in the county, Baltimore County.
What was that like? Is it like Baltimore, it's one of those cities that has always been in the news. Like, people know Baltimore. It's like a New York City. It's like that type of effect. So what was that like in your experience?
It's it's an open air drug market like I've never seen anywhere in the nation. I've been all over. I've never seen, like, it's very much drug addicted. Like I think it's like 1 in 5 people struggle with drug addiction. Some crazy high number like that. So we are known, like even in like 50 Cent's song, we are known for heroin. Like that is like our thing. They have their own type of heroin out there. It's called Scramble. And that's like what the city is known for. I mean, they have what's called the Lexington lean, which is like people leaned over, standing up and everything. So, I mean, it definitely got worse after the Freddie Gray thing, though. When the Freddie Gray thing happened, that's when the city really got off the hook. But prior to that, it was definitely a little bit more calmer. I mean, the drugs were still present, but it wasn't as much like murder and the crazier type of crimes.
Why do you think it's such a big drug city?
I used to have a lot of friends in like New York, and the way they described it was that the stuff comes in through New York, but it sells in Baltimore. For whatever reason it is just how it's always been. And it's been like that for generations. To the point where, you got to think that song came out in early 2000s. When 50 made that song about it. So it's been going on for a long time.
So when you were in school, was it just rampant drug use among kids too?
Terrible. I mean, so we were probably like one of the epicenters of the whole Oxycontin epidemic. And I look back now and like see like how much availability there was in Oxycontins back then. I mean, you had 16-year-old kids with grocery bags full of them, to where like it was easier to get oxys than it was to get alcohol back then. I mean, you look back and you think like what kids you would assume to be drug addicts, that was out the window. Like there was soccer players, football players, lacrosse players, cheerleaders. I think it was like 75% of my graduating class had an opiate problem. It was terrible. It was really, really rampant back then.
And what do you think the hook was for these individuals to try it? Because sometimes people get addicted to these things because they're in pain or they had an injury. And from what I've experienced, seeing guests on the show is normally the trigger. But if a high school kid is just randomly trying these, there's got to be some type of reason.
So at least in my experience, I can't speak for everybody out there. For me, I got addicted originally from an injury, from a four-wheeler injury. But what I saw is the more popular kids in the high school, they were the ones doing it. And so everybody who wanted to be friends with them ended up doing it. And that's in my experience. It might be different from other people, but it was just that the popular kids did it. It was what was cool back then.
Yeah, it's a cool thing. Isn't it amazing how much like peer pressure and influence has over like changing people? Like someone's whole life could change just because they saw a cool person doing it, and that applies to every day with influencers.
Yeah.
Now, like you watch what influencers post, and people kind of tend to follow that.
Yep.
It's pretty crazy when you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, it was, you know, especially like we all knew, you know what I mean? Everybody knew back then, like, this is something you get physically addicted to. This is something that will kill you, but to still do it anyway. Like, it goes out the window. Like, I guess it's always that, like, oh, it's not going to be me mentality.
Yeah.
That causes everybody to do it.
What was it like for you growing up? Did you have both parents and siblings?
So my mom is an angel. She worked super hard to provide for us. My dad, to try to make a long story short, like my grandparents were very well off. My dad, even though he grew up very well off, he wanted to be a gangbanger. And he was in a motorcycle club and had struggled with drug addiction really bad. My mom at that point moved back to my grandparents' house while my dad spent most of my younger years in prison. And he was definitely my first influence for sure because like I hold his name. He was murdered 2 years ago actually in Baltimore. Oh, and yeah, so like I always wanted to be like my dad. Like he was like my even though it was all just negative criminal activity, like that was like the cool figure to me.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I appreciate him.
Did you ever get to talk to him, or did you ever wonder why, you know, someone that came from a successful family decided to go into that life?
You know, it's like, yeah, I mean, for sure. Like, I definitely wondered, for sure. But at the same time, like, the same way he was drawn to all the negative things and the bad things in the world is the same way I am. Like, I was very much drawn to do everything, like, past rebelling. Like, just everything that's negative and bad, like, I grew an attachment to it and grew like a wonder for it. And so I kind of even understood it, but his big thing was alcohol. He had a terrible problem with alcohol, and that's what led to him kind of making all the bad decisions that he made. You know, some of my youngest memories are being down Baltimore copping with him, because he did do heroin too, but that's my youngest memory. Then going to Jessup State Prison and visiting him too. Like, that's some of my youngest memories of my dad. And I guess that also kind of like, in a way, cemented in my mind that was cool, being so young, seeing that. But yeah.
How much of yourself do you see in him?
A lot. Yeah, a lot. I mean, now, like, I've kind of come out of that now. And I feel like I'm definitely a different person than I was, but there's a lot of similarities. I mean, down to like we like the same foods, the same music. We're both into motorcycles. Like, you know, there's a lot. There's definitely a lot.
Does watching the influence he had kind of like passed down to you put into perspective, like when you have kids one day, if you want kids?
Oh, yeah,
to kind of like make sure your life is a certain way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like he glorified everything bad to me too and made it seem super cool. And that's like something I definitely think I will spare my children from having to hear. Like, you know, like from a young age, I was definitely led to believe that the gangster stuff was cool. Not that I'm a gangster in any way, shape, or form, but that's just what was always cool. That was what, you know, watching like Goodfellas as a kid and then watching Scarface, like that's what was portrayed to be cool to me. And I definitely don't think at a 4 or 5-year-old kid I should be watching that. And that's what I think influenced me a lot. So,
dude, I feel for these like kids of like, I see these parents that come on to my show like in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and they talk about how they recently got out of jail, addiction, this and that. And I feel for the kids and the family members and the wives that are affected. Yeah. Like, imagine, like, you see on the news these guys that go to prison for fraud in their 40s or 50s. It's not their life that's affected. It's all the people around them, and it's no different with a drug addiction.
Yeah, I always, like, and maybe this is because of how I am, but, like, I always think, like, they're just super easy to give out big years for stuff that's, like, a victimless crime. Like, that blows me away. Like, you're ruining people's lives and tearing away from their families and stuff for, like, things that I just don't see as, like when you talk about, like, fraud, like, wouldn't it make more sense to just, like, make them pay it back?
Yeah, the working thing.
Yeah, like
I think they should maybe give them the opportunity to come up with a plan. Yeah, because like if a 20-year prison sentence, yes, it's great for revenge, but as you get older, you realize, you know, the revenge doesn't really like, you can wish for someone's downfall, but that doesn't make you any different if like you're asking for them to be wrong too. Right. You want the money back, you know? Like me in my situation, I was ready to work and do all that. And it makes it harder when you throw a prison sentence. You're just delaying I just think it needs to be restructured, especially in the fraud cases. Now, obviously, someone like Bernie Madoff, is he paying back, $100 million or $100 billion or whatever the number? No, but in most situations, and maybe even for drug offenses, have them go work in a drug rehab or something to see what those drugs were doing to these individuals. Yeah, I mean, you look about like the big time drug dealers and stuff like that. Like most of them, like, I mean, obviously when you get to prison, you have time to reflect, but I don't know a single one. I've read books on a lot of them that like don't deeply regret what they've done. I mean, but at the same time, like you got to look at it, and this is coming from somebody who was addicted to it. Like I would never blame them for what happened to me. Like if they didn't do it, somebody else was going to do it. It's just you got to come after the demand at the end of the day. The supply is always going to be there. The demand is what's going to be changed, I feel. Yeah, and then also just like, I've been talking to more law enforcement agents and stuff recently and seeing how the government kind of like lets these dealers operate to a certain extent so they could catch the bigger fish. But how much harm is that actually creating too by, letting these individuals out to bring in the bigger ones? I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of wild. That's definitely wild. I mean, especially like there's always going to be somebody that steps up. Like it's just I wonder if it ever ends. It never ends. Or if it's just a constant revolving door. It's never going to end. There's no way. So in high school, did you ever get into dealing or anything like that? Yeah, for sure. So I got raided at 17. Raided by who? By DEA. At 17 years old, you became on the DEA's radar. Yeah. So it was like a task, like in they have like it's like DEA and like the county police work together. It's not like, the feds coming in sweeping, but it was like, so I was living with an ex-girlfriend and I was getting really sloppy at the time. I was already super addicted to drugs at this point. And they raided the house just for weed. I mean, this is back when weed was like super illegal still. What year was this? 2010. Okay. Because it was 6 months before my 18th birthday. Because the rule was, at least that's what I was told, is that if you're within 6 months of your 18th birthday, they can charge you as an adult. So they raided the house, and it was, no lie, 20 minutes too early. And my guy was on his way with more, and they raided 20 minutes too early, and then kicked the door in, did the whole 9 yards. I was actually getting in the shower, so they took me downstairs in front of the whole family, just handcuffed in a towel. That was terrible. And yeah, that was the end of the weed dealing thing. But I mean, everyone in high school sold weed. How much was the guy bringing over? It was only like a pound. It wasn't like an excessive amount, but... And not everyone in high school is getting their door kicked down by a task force. Yeah, I mean, between me and my brother, though, we had like a I don't want to say like a name, but like the people knew, like we were on the news together like earlier that year for a big fight and stuff. So people like the county kind of knew about us. Like it made national news and stuff like that. So they couldn't arrest you. They couldn't do anything in that moment. No, they didn't do anything. I mean, they found like little things like a couple empty caps of heroin, a scale, but nothing like substantial. I mean, I guess they could have, like they could have got, but nothing to like prove distribution. Never got charged. Never got charged. Nope. Wow. So rewinding, how did you even come on their radar? So I was super good with it and like very like careful about everything I did, but I would never, like I was never like a nickel and dime person. Like I always, fronted it out to people. They sold it and bring me that money. So I was more of like doing that type of thing. But then towards the end, when I'm getting like heavily addicted to opiates, I'm getting sloppy and I'm just, every dollar I'm getting is going back out to opiates. And having people come to the house. And this is like a suburban neighborhood. This is not like in the hood or by any stretch of the imagination. This is very much suburban. And cars pulling up nonstop. Then somebody got busted out front with pills in their car. It was a friend of mine. And I think that kind of like set it off. And then there was another one where it was like a drug deal going wrong. Dude kicked my door in when I wasn't there. And then the police, again, suburban America, like neighbors called the cops. It's broad daylight. And yeah, so that I think that was kind of when they got the hint, like, okay, something's going on in this house. Now, were you making money at all? Like any serious money? In the beginning, yeah. In the beginning, I mean, not serious for a 16-year-old kid, like $1,000 a week. But, at the end, like I said, it was just constantly, everything that comes in goes right back out. Nothing substantial by any means. That wasn't until I got into the pills that I was like making good money with that. Out of your like graduating class, how many do you think were selling drugs? It was really just me and one other guy. So you had a pretty control over the market. Yeah, for sure. I mean, like,
I mean, there was people like under me for sure that like I would front to and stuff like that. But as far as like me, like getting like weight and giving it out, like it was me and one other guy.
What's the real way to make money in the drug business? Is it being like the corner person selling the little bags, or is it breaking down, selling the big weight and fronting it out?
Definitely,
and what's the risk factor?
Definitely the breaking it down and fronting it out. If you have people you can trust, for sure. So not your money's coming in so slow. And I even use that in business today, like with what I do for the construction side. Like the faster you get your money is always going to be better. So if you're trying to nickel and dime to get the most out of everything, you're not going to make as much money in the long run.
But it also opens the door to more people that could expose you or snitch on you.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, that's also, I mean, you got a risk factor, you got a money factor. Like, the way to go is always going to be weight, in my opinion, at least.
How do you learn all about this? Was it from your dad or was it from someone else?
No, I just learned. I mean, it was over time and it was over, like, trial and error, really. I mean, you know, there was no real teacher or anything. I mean, the guy I bought from, he kind of, like, gave me a little bit of game, but not much. Like, it was more really just trial and error and then just trying to do everything. The one thing I was told that really stuck with me is he told me, any little thing you can do to reduce your risk, do it. It doesn't matter if it's taking a different route there that you came, you know, any little thing you can do it just to make it a little bit safer. And that's something I've really kind of like put into my whole daily routine when it came to that. So
what were the biggest ways to reduce risk as a drug dealer?
Well, like fronting it out, not doing every little nickel and dime. Back roads were a big thing. You know, just pull up window, hand it over. That was a good one. Taking a different route there than you took back when you re-up. Switching up houses, a lot helped. Different cars, just little stuff like that.
No,
that's what I did.
These guys were so on to you, the local police, because they don't just randomly kick down the door one day. Did you get wind that they were coming after you?
Yeah, actually, funny story. The school resource officer at the high school actually brought me in one day specifically to tell me that they were waiting until my 18th birthday to kick the door in.
Really?
But I just blew it off. I was like, nah, you're good. Nah, it's fine. But yeah, he specifically, I'll never forget him. He was a great guy. I still talk to him to this day. Awesome, awesome officer. Yeah, he brought me in specifically just to tell me that.
Now, being this young and dealing, were there older people in the area that you were kind of like stepping on their toes, maybe in their market?
So at this point, all the older people besides one person had moved on to selling OxyContins. There was one other guy, but we ended up being like really cool. Like we never had a problem. So yeah, no, I mean, there never was any hardship or any beef between me and anybody else by any means. I mean, like it's not like that down there. Like it's not like a real competitive market to where like everyone's fighting for, I mean, it's everywhere. Like, you know, people, like a lot of the dealers will call other dealers when they run out. Like it's very much like almost like a weird little fucked up community.
So everyone's friendly with each other?
Oh yeah, for sure.
There's no violence at all?
Not where I was, no. Not where I was. Now you gotta remember, I'm in the county. I'm not in like the inner city. Mm-hmm. Like I'm in the county area, so.
Is there violence in the inner city area?
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure, yeah. I mean, we hold the murder like at a steady 365 every year, like a steady murder a day. And this inner city's definitely violent.
Is it from gangs?
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure, like from what I was told was that like when the whole Freddie Gray thing happened, that like it became like a thing where they robbed the pharmacy during the riots, then people went out on the corners to try to sell. And then the big dealers came in and was like, you know, they were stepping on their toes. So I'm assuming a lot of it's drug related. I mean, have you ever seen The Wire?
No, I heard it was good though.
Yeah, so it's kind of like everything that happens in The Wire, I mean, it's written by a Baltimore City cop. So it's basically a lot of it's drug related. I don't think there's much gang there. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's probably is gangs, but I don't think it's like what you see in like LA or places like that.
Yeah. Well, they've always said like Baltimore is kind of like one of those violent cities.
Yeah.
To a certain extent.
Yeah, for sure.
With the arrests and like you were saying, the murders and whatnot.
Yeah.
It is probably one of the highest murder areas, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's like us in Chicago.
Yeah, Chicago's bad too.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, I watched something on them recently where it's like, because I always assumed they were all drug-related murders, like over drug beefs and stuff. But they say like the whole South Side thing is just strictly like a point-for-point system. Like it's not even like they're really, I mean, I don't know. I'm not in Chicago, but from what the guy was saying is like it's just a point system. There's, you know, it's been beef that's been there for years, and that's what they're going for.
Yeah.
And that's mind-blowing.
Do you think the cartel operates in Baltimore at all?
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, we have the ports. I know a lot of it comes in through the ports too, but I'm sure like to have that big of a drug market, there's got to be some cartel presence.
And Baltimore's where the bridge collapsed, right?
Yes, yeah.
Wow. So how does that affect everyday travel now?
Oh, it's terrible, man. It's absolutely terrible.
Have you experienced that front end?
Yeah, absolutely. So like that bridge was the only way to connect like the county to the city. It was a very quick drive from county to city, which is now going straight down the main I-95. And it is added 45 minutes to get, like, if I was going past the city for work, it's added 45 minutes to my drive.
So how long would it normally take you?
About
with the
30
bridge?
minutes.
So it added 15 extra minutes?
No, oh, no, sorry. So, like, it's like an hour and a half now where it used to be 30 minutes to 45 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's
and
bad.
Is it just jammed up traffic all the time?
Terrible, yeah. At the tunnel, it's awful.
So you're in construction now. You wake up early for work. You could have been on that bridge, right? Technically, or you didn't really use it?
I mean, there's a chance. Yeah, there's a chance. I mean, very, very few jobs do I do down that way.
Okay.
But, I mean, prior to it, like probably a couple months prior to it, I was taking that bridge every day because it was the way around traffic, too.
Yeah, that's such a crazy thing to happen. And you're right about the ports, though, because you have the ports there, and that's probably probably a huge component with the drug trade.
Yeah.
You don't think the cops are onto it? Maybe now so, but back then you don't think they were on top of that?
On top of what?
The ports, controlling them?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. But, I mean, it's like with everything, like, you know, like going through the border, taking it through plane, taking it through the ports. They're only going to catch so much.
Yeah, people will always find a way.
Yeah.
So 17, you know, the DEA, the cops show up. Does that scare you to the point where you're like, I'm done, I'm out? Or does that just, like, you double down?
So for a time period, yeah. So I actually went to rehab shortly after that for the first time. And I did 30 days in rehab to get off all the opiates and everything. 'Cause at that time, it was just Oxycontin. And I came out and I was good. Like, I was like, I'm done. I'm not selling anymore. But that didn't last. It lasted like 6 months.
Why?
I had found a plug in New York and for perks back then. And that's when perks were really jumping. Because Oxycontin had already gotten phased out where, like, they put that coating in where you couldn't crush it or anything. So everyone had switched to perks. Well, I had found a plug to get perks for super cheap, as many as you wanted. So once I found that, then it was back to game on, because now everybody was doing perks.
And how much would you make off of that? And how much are you picking up? What's the breakdown?
It was like probably a couple hundred, maybe like 200 to maybe 3 at most. Paying between 15 and 20 and bringing them back here and selling them for 20 to 30.
And how much do you think you're moving a week?
Easy 600.
And it's that easy to find clientele. Like, I always thought, like, if I was a drug dealer, like, how would you find the people without getting caught and doing, you know?
I was fresh out of school. I was fresh out of high school. And like I said, everybody was doing it. As soon as one person said they had it, everybody would call your phone. Because it was just, it's not like street drugs where it's like you can go anywhere and get it. Like, it's something that is, you know, prescribed, so it's not a constant source. So as soon as I had them, it was done at that point. Like, it was just they used to call my phone the bat phone because it would ring nonstop. I'd have to turn it off. It was just a little burner phone, but it would just be ringing nonstop.
Who do you think was your biggest demographic? Like men, women, people that were in school, people that were working, and maybe any issues like
high school kids, men and women both. I mean, it was, like I said, it was not by any stretch of the imagination a certain person. It was the cheerleaders down to the stoner kids, the skaters. Like, there was a couple older people, but it was mainly all people I knew, because now I knew I was dealing with something that if I got caught, I was going to get some time. So, like, I tried to keep it as close as possible, but it was generally all people I knew.
Where are these people's parents? Like, they're not checking on them, seeing something's going on, asking where they're getting drugs from? Yeah,
I mean, not back then. Not back then. It wasn't like it is today, where it's like the opiate crisis is known and it's like you look for it. Like, back then, it was not like you had a couple people that would get caught by their parents and stuff like that. And these are like 17, 18, maybe 19-year-old kids, and they're all just graduating high school at this point. But, I mean, my parents knew, obviously, because I already got back from rehab. But Short of that, no. Nobody, I mean, nobody's parents really, it was hidden well, I guess.
Was anyone dying in your circle?
Not then. Not then, because I guess because it was just perks. Yeah, nobody was really, I mean, you had like the select few that passed away, and that was traumatizing at that point. Because even that was like kind of before my time. But it was more at this point, it was playful than it was like a serious problem. I mean, you're still doing an opiate and you're still addicted, but it wasn't like the junkie on the corner type of stuff back then. It was more of like a party acceptable type of thing. So it wasn't like as serious back then.
How are you able to maintain the actual business side of drug dealing while you yourself was facing addiction?
Not well. Not well at all. I mean, in anything, in the beginning I was good. Like I was clean actually when like I first started doing it for like the first month. And then as time progressed, my habit gets a little bit stronger. Yeah, I'd go from like doing 2 a day to 10 a day to 20 a day. And then by the next thing I know, I'm totally fucking up the money and just robbing Peter to pay Paul at that point. And it didn't last very long. It was probably like a 7-8 month run of doing this. I was very fortunate to always get out before things got like really bad.
Yeah, because not everyone can say that.
Yeah, I mean, that's God looking out for me by all stretch of the, like, I have been super fortunate when it came to that. Like, it's like every time something serious was about to happen, like things would go bad for me and I have to stop. So, yeah, that's pretty much how that went down.
Wow.
Yeah.
And your parents, they're not trying to intervene at all. I know you went to rehab, but did they think that rehab helped you completely, or were they trying to be more involved and active?
So I went to rehab. I came back. So that year, I had gotten kicked out of high school. I was using my grandparents' address to be in a better school district to go to this high school. But then there was a big fight with my brother that was all over the news. Therefore, my address got released to the school about what my real address was. They didn't want me there anymore. So I had to go to a different high school. So now I'm fresh off of drugs. And like, if anybody knows anything about being fresh off of drugs, like you are not comfortable in your skin by any stretch. And I'm in a different school where nobody knows me. I don't know anybody. It's totally different, like culture, totally different people. And so I came back from rehab, was in this school. I went for about a week and then just stopped going. And like, I would literally just hide in the woods by the school and just do nothing all day just so I didn't have to go. And eventually they called my parents and were like, yeah, he hasn't been here for like 2 months. So they kicked me out at that point. I went to go live with my girlfriend at the time. And so they weren't around enough to really, I mean, I'm sure they knew like something was up, but they weren't really around enough to know that like I was that deep in it. I think at one point I told my dad what I was doing with the New York stuff. And he, out of concern, called my mom and told her. But, you know, I just denied it until a toll came in that I ran a toll in New York. And they were like, yeah, okay.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how I got caught up.
So when you say big fight, what do you mean? Like when a fight makes the news, it's got to be pretty big.
So it was my brother had just gotten out of like what's juvenile like detention center down there. He had an ankle bracelet on. He had been kicked out of public school system for like 6-7 years at this point, a long time, since like elementary school, when he's finally back in his like junior year. And some kid just started messing with him. And the kid was saying he was a blood and this, that. And this is county kids that like do not gangbang. And he's saying he's a blood. And my brother was like, you're not a blood. Like, stop it. Like, you didn't know any of the right stuff. And him and the kid got into a fight. But what happened is my brother knocked him unconscious and completely embarrassed him in front of everybody. And it was all recorded. It was on YouTube back then. Like, it was like, you know, the potato phone where you can't see anything. So he knocked him completely out cold. Then they get suspended for 2 weeks. They come back. And on the second time, the kid jumps him to try to redeem himself. And my brother, who was like trying to like push him off to wait for the school resource cop to come, because he didn't want to get in trouble. He's on probation. He's got the ankle monitor. School resource officer didn't come fast enough. And the kid, I got him one good time in the face, and you can see in the video, his face turns completely red. And that's when he dropped the kid, hit him one good time, dropped him. And we're like, all right, cool, we won. But then he jumps on top of him and starts beating his head into the concrete. And the kid's like head just bouncing off. And the school cop runs out. He throws the school cop, or the cop trips. You can't really tell in the video because it's like old. the cop trips or he falls and he just keeps going at it. And then another principal runs up, pulls him off. So then they're arresting my brother. I'm mad. I'm high and I'm mouthy as hell. So I start yelling for no reason at all. And then I get arrested for disturbing the peace or whatever the charge was back then. So now we're all sitting in the principal's office waiting for, you know, whatever to happen. And all of a sudden we hear, call an ambulance. And they swing the door open and the kid's on the floor having a seizure. Then shock trauma shows up to take him by helicopter. So we thought this kid was dead. He was in a coma for like 4 days. But then, yeah, so that ended up making news.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like scenarios like that always happen in school. Like I remember there was some big fights where people would get severely hurt in high school and someone gets charged and someone's whole life could change forever on both the victim and the person that did that.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually like really sad for the kid. Like he got embarrassed totally through this whole thing. He had to switch schools and everything. Like, I mean, now, you know, we're 12 years past high school. Like, I'm sure nobody even cares anymore. But I'm sure at the time he was just devastated by the whole thing. So,
did your brother ever get a chance to apologize to him?
Oh no, he don't care. He does not care. I mean, the kid, he's stone cold. Like he just does not. I mean, it's unfortunate because after all the time he's done in prison, he hasn't matured at all by any means. Like he still lives in that like high school mentality. So he still will post a video on his Facebook, thinking it's like still cool and everything. It's kind of sad, but like,
does it make you reevaluate your friendship and relationship with him?
Yeah. I mean, like all the time he spent in prison, I'll always love him. Like he'll always be my boy and everything, but he's just not mentally well anymore. The prison system just destroyed him mentally, completely destroyed him.
So now the toll booth. Tell us that story.
So there is a ton of tolls between here and New York, man, or Baltimore and New York. There is a ton of tolls, and one of them was like $25, and I was like down to my last dollar on that gas and re-ups. I was like, I'm just gonna run it. I was young. I didn't know they would send a letter, you know, like a picture or whatever to the house. And it was the Verrazano Bridge, and I got that ticket, and my parents lost it. They lost it. They were like, we knew you. I made some excuse up, like, oh no, I just went there for the day, But they knew for sure.
I can't believe you ran and then they sent you the letter. Why was it $25?
That's how much it cost. That's how much the toll was. Yeah. It was $25 to go through.
And do you think that had a major impact on your life, like a turning point?
No. I mean, it at that point I was just gung ho to do whatever. Like I was like, you know, they stayed mad at me. They were always pissed. I was always doing something wrong.
Yeah.
So
they didn't wonder why you were heading out there or what you were
doing. They
had
already had like the suspicion because my dad had already told them like, hey, he told me he's going to New York to pick up perks, like just so you know what's going on with him, because my dad was concerned, and that's a lot to say. My dad was concerned. So
yeah, was your dad getting, you know, word back in the streets about what his son was doing?
Yeah, for sure.
And he didn't care at all. He wasn't trying to
my
stop
dad's
you?
the first one to ever give me heroin when I was 14 years old. Like he just lived a different life than most fathers do. Like I tell people that nowadays, and they're like blown away. But he was just like, he wanted to be a friend more than a father. He wasn't well himself. Like he had been through it. So.
Do you ever think that if that toll incident could have led to like you actually getting pulled over with the drugs in your car?
So I did get pulled over
with drugs in your car.
The one time I did not have drugs in the car. Like I said, like I've always had this divine intervention to where like something happens and I just get really lucky. The guy who I was getting everything from, his car broke down on the turnpike. He's like, hey, can you come get me? Like my car just broke down. So we drive up there, me and a buddy, and we pick him up, and we pull. You know, we're at one of the rest stops on the Jersey Turnpike. We pull off, and my buddy steals a candy bar. All of a sudden, the cops walk up to the car, and I'm like, dude, we're about to get in trouble for him stealing a candy bar. No, it looked like just a husband and wife in a regular like minivan. And I saw the badge, and they immediately were like, why is two 18-year-old kids from Maryland with a 39-year-old black dude from New York City? That's what they saw, and immediately knew something was off. So they searched the car. They had like three different type of officers come out. One was in a suit, one was just regular like plain clothes, and then they searched through the whole car. They didn't find anything but a couple straws and let us go. But that was kind of where it ended at that point for me. That's when I was like, all right, that's my sign. I need to stop.
So if that happened like 20 minutes later,
yeah, again,
you're in prison for 10 years.
Yep, for trafficking.
How much drugs were you picking up?
About 300 again. Every trip was like a 300 pack.
And how much money, or are you getting fronted?
I was getting fronted.
Okay, so what was the value of a 300 pack?
If you do the math, so
the wholesale.
Yeah, how much was I paying for it?
Yeah, how much were you paying?
Shit, whatever 300 times 15 is, I don't know off the top of my head. This is like 10, 11 years ago.
How does a kid fresh out of high school build a relationship to get fronted like that?
I just got really lucky. Like, that's like, even people say about me now is like the one thing I possess is the ability to find drugs no matter what. I mean, I was always just really lucky. Like, when I go back to the weed, like, I had a buddy, and his buddy had a neighbor, and the neighbor ended up selling pounds of weed. And like, I ended up getting close with the neighbor somehow, and that's how I got my weed connect. So then, and then this guy with the pills, like, I had a buddy. My buddy was from New York. He's doing life in prison right now. The kid that introduced us, he introduced me to this guy. This guy just happened to have pills, and I was just buying like one or two here and there. And then one day I met up with him, and we were just cool. And like, I had also already gotten raided at this point. I already knew a little bit of the game, and like, I think he saw that in me, and like saw that like I was smart and kind of knew what I was doing, how to move and everything. And he was like, all right, I'll give you 5. He's like, I'll give you 5 of these, and when you get done, bring it back to me. And that's how I just worked my way up from 5 to 10 to 10 to 15, 15 to 20, and just worked my way up to where he was just handing me the whole thing and just saying, go ahead.
No, after that raid, normally cops don't just like back off after they lose one, they double down. Were they still, heavily on top of you?
Not that I could not that I could tell. I mean, like, there was always like this weird van parked in the neighborhood that I always wondered like if that was like some kind of surveillance van or something, but there was nothing traumatic to where they were like, once the house got raided, like leading up to the house getting raided, if people pulled into the court or if they saw me walking down and meet people, cops would pull up immediately. Like, it was that surveilled. And then after the raid, that kind of just went away. I've been told by people, and again, I don't know the whole, like, how the inner workings of how the police force works, but once they raid your house, that if they don't find anything, it's hard for them to continue surveilling you, and that it violates so many rights to get raided. Again, I don't know. This is just what I was told. Mm-hmm. So that's what I was told, though, is that once they come up with nothing in a raid, they can't keep going. Yeah,
because then it becomes like harassment.
Right, exactly, yeah.
So back to that stop where, the cops come before you end up picking. Do you end up picking up after that stop?
No, we went home.
So you knew in your mind, I got to be done with this.
Yeah, I mean, because all it would have taken is us to get it and them be still watching. And like, then we're getting pulled over again. And I was done. I was like, I'm going home.
What does your dealer say?
He's right with me. We had talked because they pulled. I had a person drive me because, like I said, I always try to switch cars. So I had a person drive me, and he pulled me to the side, and he's like, I don't like the way, like, they pulled the driver to the side and was like talking to him separately from us. And he was like, I don't like the way that they're talking to him separately, because they didn't do that with either me or him. Mm-hmm. So like, at that point, we kind of went home at that point. And then at that point, I wasn't allowed to really make the New York trip anymore. He was like, nah, I'm going to bring it down to you on a bus. Don't make this trip no more. Because I'm sure, like, he didn't trust me to hold it down if I was to get in trouble. I mean, why would he? Like a little 18-year-old white kid. Yeah, like, he's going to hold it down if he gets federal trafficking. So he was like, I'll bring it down to you. Like, don't worry. Like, don't come up here anymore. And that was the end of that.
Looking back on it now, do you think if you got pinched, you would have snitched? And you could be honest.
Yeah, I mean, like, I probably. I mean, I don't know for sure, because back then I was so hardcore gangster. Now, if it happened, yeah, I'm snitching. I am not a gangster. I am not, hard. I'm not going to jail for 10 years. Back then, I thought I was the shit. So, like, I don't know for sure, but probably. I mean, you get in the bullpen and things change at that point.
Yeah, everyone talks a big game until shit hits the fan, and then you really kind of find out.
Yeah, I mean, look how many people that everyone thought was so hard, and now you're finding paperwork come out about every single one of them.
Yeah.
Like, it's different when you're in there.
Look at Tekashi 6ix9ine, all those individuals and stuff.
But we all knew he was snitching.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, he vouched for that life, made it about, and the music, all these gangsters talk like this huge game, but they're not about it,
Yeah, or Finesse 2 times. I was surprised by that.
Who?
Finesse 2 times. Mm-hmm. Oh,
I don't really follow the whole rap world.
Yeah, it's another Jake. He broke the chain on that one. But
1090 does a great job of exposing people.
Yeah, that was a wild one, man. I was really surprised by that one.
Well, because it's always funny when these individuals go out and talk this big game. Oh, I didn't rap. I did my time. And then you're setting yourself up for failure. Like, no one would say anything if you didn't come out and publicly say that you're everything's good.
It was like, look at Gunna. Like, you know, Gunna definitely told, but nobody really seems to care. I mean, a few people do, but he never was like one to really like portray, I don't think so, at least portray that hard lifestyle, that I'm a gangster lifestyle.
Yeah.
So, you know, but when you come out talking about like, I'm gonna hold it down, I ain't gonna, you know, then you, like you said, you open yourself up.
So does he end up bringing you more drugs, or do you tell him no?
No, he does, yeah.
Oh, so you do still continue
Oh, yeah, I'm heavily addicted at this point. Like, I gotta do something to support my habit. But it didn't last much longer after that, because now, like, he wouldn't give me the full amount. He would only give me, like, 30 at a time, which I'm doing 20 a day. So 30 at a time ain't going to cut it. So it didn't last very long. It just kind of fizzled out after that.
Now, if you're doing so much personally yourself, how do you afford that? How do you make money? Or are you selling enough to make up for it?
I'm just pretty much selling enough to support my own habit at this point. There was no real money being made at the end. I mean, in the beginning, like the first like 5-6 months, I was killing it. You know, as an 18-year-old kid, I was definitely making like $3-4 grand a week, like, which is a lot for an 18-year-old kid. But yeah, at the end, it was just all going up my nose.
And where are you living? With your parents? Or?
Still with my ex, still with my girlfriend. Yeah.
Who's paying the bills? Because it sounds
her mom.
Like her mom.
Yeah, it was a really weird scenario with her parent. Like, so it was a townhouse, and her and her brother lived, like, it was only 2 bedrooms upstairs, one on each side of the house, and her mom just never came upstairs. So we'd have, like, full-blown parties upstairs and, like, leave drugs and everything just laying out in the open, but her mom never went upstairs. Like, even after the house got raided and everything, like, it was just a free-for-all there. So I was staying there. I wasn't leaving.
Yeah, she didn't care?
Yeah, no, it was cool. Everything was fine. Bless you.
Sorry, thank you. Yeah, what kind of mother is not like, why is my daughter dating a drug dealer?
I don't know, man. I think her mom was just like very naive too. Like, she didn't want to believe, because her older brother had been a heroin addict for like 10, 11 years, still living in the basement. And her mom was just so naive to all of it. Like, you know, we had her mom convinced the reason the house got raided is because the neighbors didn't like her and didn't like all the people coming in the house, like all the friends and parties and stuff. And she was convinced that that was the reason why. So, yeah.
I guess kind of a cool mom.
Yeah. I mean, she let her, you know, my ex is doing good now. She's doing really well, but at the time, her life got just as bad off as mine did.
Like, was she was into drugs too?
Oh yeah, for sure. That's how we kind of connected.
Addicts kind of have a way of connecting with each other, and that you guys fuel each other's addiction.
Yep, exactly. So, but she's doing well now. She's got kids and everything.
Your kids or no?
No, I went in the Army. And we split up when I went in the Army. Oh,
you decided? So why? Yeah. What made you decide to get
right
clean?
After the whole pill thing went away?
Yeah.
I got on Suboxone, worst decision ever. And then I went in the Army, and because I just needed to get away. I was like, I'm done. I need to get away. And I went in the Army, and I made it through boot camp, but or basic training. But then I went to AIT, which is like your schooling after, and I was in AIT. Now I got a little bit of freedom. You know, you kind of move around the base, do what you want. Within the first 2 months, I found somebody selling pills at the Domino's. And, yeah, they caught me.
Wait, how does a guy that's coming off drugs heavily after years of addiction pass basic training? Like, how are you physically able to do that?
I don't know, man. You don't really have a choice either. Like, it's not like you really have an option to, like... I think also a lot of people think it's a lot harder than it is. Like, it's definitely mentally and physically straining. But they set it up. They want you to do well. They want you to make it. You know, like I had also been on Suboxone for like 6 months at this point, so I wasn't like as bad off as if I just came up straight off the street. But yeah, I mean, I didn't have any problem in basic training
until you got caught with the drugs.
Yeah, that was at AIT. And that was at the schooling.
So the Army caught you, or who caught you exactly?
I got caught underage drinking. And I got put in what's called the ASAP program, which is like Army's substance abuse program. So they regularly drug test you. And, but I'd also got my wisdom teeth taken out. So I thought that, like, since I had this prescription, they wouldn't be able to tell if I'm taking the prescriptions or if I'm taking, like, something I'm buying off the street. Well, they can. They found out that so oxycodone, hydrocodone, all those, they show up different on the drug test. And that's how they ended up getting me.
Good to know.
Yeah, I didn't know that one either.
And what do they say when they're reading you the report? Are you like dishonorably discharged right away? Or
so I got other than honorable. I was also just very much not happy in the Army. And so I got in trouble twice for drinking underage. And then I got the dirty drug test. I had to go in front of like the battalion commander, which is like a colonel. And he asked me, he's like, either you have a serious problem or you just don't want to be here. And if I had said, looking back, like I have a serious problem, I just want to help, they probably would put me in rehab and let me like kind of continue. But I just didn't want to be there anymore. And then I had my aunt and uncle, they were going to let me live at their house in Texas. So I was going to get out to Texas, still be able to make a life for myself. So I told them I don't want to be here anymore. And then I shortly after got kicked out.
And then you go to Texas.
Then I go to Texas.
Did Texas help kind of change your life?
Yeah, to an extent, for sure. So that's where I think I got the foundation of like trying to make a better life for myself, for sure. My aunt and uncle were great people, and they really wanted to help me. Like they just genuinely cared, and they knew that I had a hard upbringing, and they just genuinely wanted to do something different. But I was still very much had that drug addicted mentality. Like I hadn't gotten past that. Like I can use every now and again and not get physically addicted mentality. So I started actually working there. That's when I first like got a decent job and was like making good money and like was able to save and everything because they didn't charge me rent or nothing to live there. And yeah, but then shortly that all came to an end. I actually saw somebody at a gas station there, came up and asked me for like $5, and I was like, all right, yeah, if you know where to get tar, I'll give you $5, which is black tar heroin. I happened to find the one guy in Texas that was from Maryland. He had Maryland tags, and he was the one that ended up getting me heroin in Texas. And that's where I got black tar heroin, and that was probably the closest I've ever came to death too, because that's just so potent that like it would just knock you out every single time.
What exactly is black tar heroin?
It looks like it's just gummy. It's just really gummy. It smells like straight vinegar. And it's just this gummy substance, like, and it's real sticky. It looks like tar. It looks just like tar, but it smells like vinegar. And at this point, I'm already playing with needles. So, you know, I was shooting it up, and yeah, it was intense. It was intense.
Did you get into any type of dealing to support yourself while down there?
I wasn't there very long. My life at this point is moving so quickly. Like I'm just getting place to place to place to place, trying to do better, to just trying to, like, you know, trying to get out of the situation. Running from myself, essentially, is what I'm doing. So I tried a little bit, but it's also a lot harder to sell. I mean, because like this is something I'm completely unfamiliar with. Like if we're talking like powder heroin, yeah, I can move that. I know what to do with it. I know how to cut it. This is something I'm so unfamiliar with. And also this is Texas, where like heroin's not big. This is like meth country. And so I never really got big into dealing that. I was just specifically a user at this point. And I did that. I ended up getting caught and having to leave and go back home at that point after like a couple months of using.
So now you're back in Baltimore.
Now I'm back in Baltimore. And now there was this, so right before I went in the Army, there was like everyone was kind of switching to heroin at this point, right before I went in. And there was this guy, he went by Brill, and he was like a big dope. He was like who everybody was going to. Everybody who used to do pills is now going to him to buy dope. And I get back home, and my brother is now selling heroin. And I mean, like, pretty decently sized selling heroin. And I was like, yo, where are you going? Like, who are you getting him from? He's like, Brill, man. I'm like, how is Brill still around? It's been like 4 years, and he's still selling heroin, which, like, that's another thing about, like, in the city, like, you get popped quick. Like, you don't last very long. Like, if people start dying, people start overdosing, like, it's not long before you get indictments rained out on you. This is 4 years now, and he's still selling. And it's raw dope. So in Baltimore, you have scramble, which is like very cut dope, and it comes in little capsules, and then you have raw, just pure powder heroin, and it comes in half grams and full grams. And he's been out here for like 4 or 5 years now, just selling raw heroin, which I know has got to be killing people, or at least making them overdose. I don't know about dying, but they're falling out, and he's still out there. And my brother is going down there And he's getting it from Brill. So he's basically doing the same thing I was doing for the New York guy. He's now doing for Brill. He's going down there and getting it, bringing it back up to the county to sell it because you make a lot more money in the county. You know, you get it down there for cheap, way cheaper than you would in the county. You can double your money easily. So that's what he was doing. But yeah, Brill was like the main dude, and he had like multiple people work under him. It was weird. So like a lot of the county kids were scared to go to the inner city. So what he would do is he had like right on the county line where it wasn't like the bad areas where he met all the county kids. That's where we would all go. And that's what as soon as I came back, I was right back into that.
So is this a guy you kind of looked up to?
Yeah, man, he was the shit. He was so, I mean, I remember when I first met him, he had this old little minivan, and now I see him, he's like 4 years later. I mean, this dude is stunting. I mean, just, you know, brand new car, like all nice clothes. I mean, he's always a really genuinely nice guy too. Like not your typical like cocky dealer where he treats you like a junkie. Like he was just a really nice guy, like a really nice guy.
But these flashy type of guys, they're kind of on the radar.
So, like, when I say flashy, I'm not talking about, like, a Benz or nothing like that. Like, it was, like, we knew he had money. Like, you know, he has, like, not you don't see, like, the gold chains or nothing like that, but he has a nice brand new car. He's got nice clothes on. And I'm also seeing him from when he first started out in the old beat-up Dodge Caravan. And now he's, like, you know, actually, like, got people working under him and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, but, yeah, he's definitely known. And that's the thing is, like, we all wondered, like, how is he, everybody knows who he is and he's still not getting in trouble. Because you could have asked every single person, like, you got to remember, like I said, 75% of my graduating class is now on heroin. And you ask every single one of them, they will all tell you they went to Brill or somebody who worked for Brill. So how is he still operating without punitive?
Why do you think he never got busted?
He was working with the police. Well, not working with the police. He had, that's the dude from the show, HBO. And he had like a cop on the gun trace task force that was protecting him in his operation while also taking down the competition. And that's how he was able to escape. And he wrote a book about it too. It's called The Real Antonio Shropshire Organization. And he breaks it all down and everything. Basically, like, he was able to move without any punitive action in order for, like, the other cops, they would just take out his competition and he would just keep moving around.
Are you glad you didn't get yourself heavily involved with that?
Yeah, because they all got super time, like super time. I think Brill got 25 years. My brother got 35, all suspended but 2, and he's still in prison to this day, just in and out nonstop. Guys got, I mean, nobody got less than 10 years in that whole indictment. I mean, all the cops that were involved, they got 25, 18, all tons of years. Like, well, so I know I'm kind of like bouncing back and forth, but there was a distinct point, like once I came home from Texas, like a few months later, my brother had just gotten raided. His house had just gotten raided. And we were sitting on the step. And I'm like, what are you going to... He actually hid it from the cops raiding it by putting it in his ass crack. And they didn't find it. I don't know how, but he did it. And he pulls it out. So we do the last little bit. And I'm like, you know, what are you going to do? Like, I'm going to get clean. Like, you know, this is like... the one thing I've noticed from, like, all the OxyContin dealers I knew and, like, my own experience is that once they raid your house, if you keep selling, the next thing they're going to do is they're going to get you in the car. They're going to try to pull you over, get a sting operation where you sell to an undercover. I was like, you know, what are you going to do? Are you going to stop? Are you going to keep going? And I'll never forget, he looks at me and he goes, nah, now's the time to hustle harder. And he gets up and walks away. And our lives have been drastically different from that moment on. Next thing I know, he's caught up in a federal indictment. You know, he's in and out of prison nonstop. I was able to, fortunately enough, make it out of that life and, like, do well and, you know, be successful to a degree. And I always think back to that day of where we sat there, and it blows my mind, like, the differences and how the two played out.
Do you ever reflect back on, you know, what would have happened had you have been busted, had you had been caught, and like, what life would be like if you were in prison right now?
All the time, man. All the time. I mean, you know, I think about if I had spent 10 years in prison, I don't think, like, I was always very much success driven. Like, a lot of my self-identity comes from being successful. Like, a lot of, like, what makes me feel good about myself is having some degree of success. And if I was getting out at 28 years old or 30 years old just now, I just now be getting out and thinking about, like, I got to start from scratch. And I'm watching, you know, even right now, I don't feel like I'm as far along as I should be. I feel like I should be much farther along. And seeing all my friends are married with kids, they have degrees, you know, like they have good jobs and houses, and I'm just now getting out of prison, I would probably go right back into that revolving door. I think it takes a lot. I respect, you know, a lot. I respect you for, you know, having to go through that and you know, making something out of it. Like it's hard. It's got to be hard. I mean, it would break me for sure.
And, you know, it's interesting to see this perspective of someone that could have went down the path a lot of these individuals go down, but didn't. And you're also kind of living with that thought in your mind of, oh, wow, that could have been me.
Yeah, all the time.
It puts your life in perspective.
All the time. I just think, you know, I don't like to preach and say like, oh, God this, God that, but for some reason, for sure, God has looked out for me. I mean, even my brother's house getting raided, like even that little circumstance, well, I didn't have much on me, but I left the house like 6 hours before. It's every single circumstance that like I just get lucky somehow. So, you know, that's why at this point in my life, like I'm trying everything to help other people, other addicts, and trying to live a better life and be a better person, because I've been given too many breaks to just waste it at this point.
What's your life look like now?
I'm quiet now. You know, I don't mess with anybody. I don't talk to nobody. I mean, I go to like AA meetings. I probably shouldn't say that. I go to meetings and stuff like that, but I don't talk to a whole lot of people. A lot of my friends have died. A lot, like pretty much everybody I grew up with, like they're all like not here with us anymore, or they're in jail or something. So I keep to myself. I focus on the business. I focus on trying to make my career better, and I go to homeless shelters and try to hand out food and stuff like that. Like any little thing I could do to give back, I try to do right now.
Do you think that, I know you started your business, do you think that entrepreneurial mindset was always in you? It's just you kind of applied it to the wrong thing.
ways. Yep, exactly. I'm just always, I've never really held a job my whole life. Like, even like, I had like a couple little here and there things. Like literally to get into contracting, I held a job for like 2 years and then started my own business doing it. Like I just never wanted to be able to, I never wanted to work for anybody else. I always wanted to do it myself. I just know that's the only way you're really going to make money in this world. You're never going to make it working for somebody else.
What's your relationship with your mom like now?
Now, great. So there was that slip. I had a little while back, I had a slip up and I almost died. I was in the hospital for 8 days in the ICU on life support and everything. And ever since then, like we've been super tight. We've been super tight. I think it kind of came to the realization of her, like I could have been dead. And I also came to the realization like she was the only one there for me when everything went bad. So me and my mom were like, we're super tight. And my stepdad, we're cool too. But he's a very hardcore military man. And like, he's just different than what I grew up with. So like, but we're all cool. Like we're all happy now to an extent. And yeah, it's good now. It's definitely good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to your younger self if you went back in time and like you were standing in a room with him?
I always think about this, and I don't think I'd give any advice. I think I'd let it play out exactly how it played out. Like kind of like when Novak said, is every single decision I made and every single bad event and every single negative thing that happened to me is what brought me here today, and I wouldn't change where I'm at today for anything. The only thing I'd probably say is that like when things get bad and you feel like it's never going to end, it always ends. Like anything you're going through, right now it seems like it's the absolute worst situation in the world and nobody's ever going to forget it and you're going to be devastated by it, but it ends. It's very short-lived and then you're right back. The world moves in cycles and like you might be on top now, but you won't be next year and vice versa. You might be down now, but next year you could be up, and that's the most true thing somebody's ever told me.
You got to weather the storm.
Exactly.
You got to, you know, as much as there's highs, there's the lows that counterpart it. And what, you know, the people that make it are the ones that go through it.
Yep, exactly.
Well, Jay, thank you so much for coming today and sharing your story. And we wish you the best with your new merch business, your contracting business. And yeah, keep in touch.
All right, man. Thank you.